pledge allegiance
to the flag
to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Jeff
Jeff
Renahan.
Renahan, First Ward.
Carlos, Second Ward.
Jessica Lopez, Third Ward.
Michael Safone, Fourth Ward.
Matthew Wolliver, Fifth Ward.
Ann Schurshin, Sixth Ward.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, attorney for the town.
John Baisley, Town Supervisor. Welcome, everybody. We seem to have quite a few guests. Tonight's agenda, the first thing on the agenda is a public hearing on a towing law. Number 2 is a public hearing amending zoning law, Chapter 210, relating outdoor dining and street closures. 3, set a date for public hearing for property maintenance for 10 Monitor Road and 12 Raker Road, 30 Carriage Hill will be taken off the agenda due to the fact that that's been taken care of. 4, tax certs for 2757 to 2759 West Main, Riverside Office Park, Oak Tree Garden Apartments, Manor Hill Mobile Home Park. 5, authorize supervisor to sign conveyance of easement for the Wiltsey Estate. 6, appoint Historic Preservation Commission members. 7, accept certificates of attendance for Bob Nasser and Rocco Romeo. 8, accept the retirement of Keith Ballard, Senior Water Superintendent. 9, accept the resignation of Lizette Tucker, the Zoning Administrator. 10, accept the retirement of Charles Harris, Auto Mechanic with the Highway Department. 10, appoint Timothy Miller, Software Support Specialist. 12, resolution for South Hills Common rezone. 13, authorize the supervisor to sign an agreement with Dutchess County Resource Recovery Sewer Disposal Agreement. 14, authorize the supervisor to sign Shady Brook Sewer Tenancy Stormwater Easement and Agreement. We have 3 special consents. Appoint attorney regarding the claim against the town. 2, authorize the supervisor to sign Marist College stormwater documents. 3, authorize the supervisor to sign Coreward Ventures Sewer Tenancy Agreement. With that motion, I'd like to suspend the rules for any item on the agenda.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody who would like to talk to any item on the agenda? And this is not in relation to either one of the public hearings, but any other item.
I'd like, good evening, everybody. My name is David Lakowitz. I'm an attorney with Moses and Singer. My colleague Dan Hoffman is on the line as well. We're counsel to Dutchess Towing. We would like to talk about the administrative hold that's been placed on Dutchess and also share our views on the prospective legislation, if that's okay with everybody.
You know, David, why don't you just wait till we open that public hearing so it gets all tied into that public hearing?
Oh, okay. I thought you were inviting public comments.
Yeah,
My
no,
apologies.
yeah, public comments for any other item on the agenda besides the one public hearing there.
Jay, this is Doreen.
Go ahead, Doreen.
Okay, I want to say that I'm going to miss Keith being at the Water Department. Keith has always been very responsive, and I always got the feeling that he was giving me the straight scoop and, you know, not trying to hide anything and just really put everything out there. And I appreciate that. Not everybody's that way. And but over all these years, I always felt that Keith and the Water Department guys in general, and I hope that Tom carries on in that tradition. So just want to tell Keith that I appreciate it and say goodbye.
Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Make a motion to move.
Jay,
Oh.
Jay, can I chime in on that?
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark, I just want to say the same thing for Keith. When Keith came into the water department, it made it where all 3 departments started to work together really well. They made a huge change in our town's performance, and it's been an absolute pleasure to work with him. He's going to be missed. I know Tom's going to step up and do a good job, but Keith, it's been a great pleasure to work with you. You're going to be missed. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Keith, you don't get the comment.
That'll be a first.
Yeah. And anybody else? If not, a motion to resume the rules?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Go ahead.
Now I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing on towing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody like to make public comment on tone? David, now it's your time.
Thank you, and again, I apologize for
No, that's
jumping
okay.
the gun. So, to me, there are two separate but related issues. On the one hand, we have the administrative hold, and then related to that is the legislation that this town board is considering passing. I want to spend most of my time. I'm not going to take up too much time, but on the administrative hold, because it really struck me as fairly obviously improper. And I'd like just to take a minute to walk the board through why I believe that to be the case. For one, there's no such thing as an administrative hold. The town presently has a policy, a written policy, that dictates how the tow roster is going to be managed. To simply declare that a company, without any written notice, without any basis for the suspension, to declare essentially that a company can't work is violative of both due process and equal protection. Again, there was no written notice given. It's my understanding and Duchess's understanding that this was basically done by fiat from the board. And respectfully, the board doesn't have the authority to have placed an administrative hold on anybody. The problem is there's no administrative remedy by which Duchess can contest this. In the normal course, what would happen would be the written policy is followed, a written notice is given to the company detailing the reasons for the hold, the suspension, whatever you want to refer to it as. And then within the policy is an administrative process pursuant to which the company can appeal that decision. And here that hasn't happened. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is, as we sit here today, Duchess is on the roster. And this hold did remove the company from the roster, but rather the company has been systemically skipped from its toes on basically a daily basis for the last 6 months. The only word, as far as I could tell, in the written policy that appears in all caps was the word must. And the word must is utilized in the context of mandating that the police officers must request the next available company to tow. And again, Duchess has been skipped in violation not only of its due process and equal protection rights in the sense that it's being treated differently from other tow companies, but it's an express violation of the policy that this town enacted. Separate and apart from those reasons as to why this administrative hold needs to be lifted immediately is the fact that Duchess does have a property interest in this rotation slot. Now, I watched the 2 sessions before, and I know Mr. Woodlever, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, made clear that you disagree that there's a property interest. And the rest of the board agreed with you. I couldn't tell from the dialogue if you were referring to the prospective legislation you're hoping to pass or the current policy. With respect now, though, to the current policy, I think there's really no doubt that it does confer a property right to the tow owners, because it does not vest, the policy does not vest the police with the unilateral authority, or anybody, or the board, to kick people off the roster. And so there is a case law throughout the country that talks about, in this context, that the tow company does have a property or a proprietary right. The policy details 2 specific reasons that a tow company can be sanctioned or removed from the list. And they have to do with failing to meet operational requirements and failing to perform at a satisfactory level. None of that's happened here. There's no allegation that any of that has happened here. There is nothing in the policy that permits a company to be removed only because of this commonality in ownership. There is also the tow truck application itself details a host of requirements that all companies must satisfy, and it also details their entitlements. And so the fact that all of these tow companies have a proprietary ownership interest in their slots and their right to be on the list is an independent reason, aside from all of the procedural issues that I referenced earlier, that they need to be restored. So in the first instance, we would ask that they be restored to the roster effective tomorrow. Now, I'm happy to talk about the proposed legislation, but I think before you even start to consider a proposed legislation that's going to govern how people are treated with respect to those companies that are currently on the roster, Duchess's rights need to be restored first. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. With specific respect to the proposed legislation, again, I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but, and I thought Mr. Coleman, who I believe is on this call, yes, did a very nice job sort of laying out the arguments for why the proposed legislation fails. But the short of it is, the FAA preempts any legislation of consensual towing unless it is, quote, genuinely responsive to safety concerns. And what that means is all of the regulations need to concern safety. They need to be responsive to specific safety concerns. And the various provisions that Duchess finds objectionable, so for instance, commonality of ownership, 5 years in the industry for the company, it's challenging to even contemplate what argument the town would make to warrant imposition of the new tow proposed legislation. With specific respect to the 5 years, so that's when I can conceptually kind of wrap my head around, and the cases would agree in the sense that the case law doesn't disagree that there should be some requirement that the folks doing the actual tows have experience, but to basically prevent any newly formed company or any new company from ever towing in the town would simply not be sustainable by the court. And so we would strongly ask that the specific provisions, or request that the specific provisions that were detailed in Mr. Coleman's letter that Duchess has detailed would be unsustainable, simply be stricken from the proposed legislation. I don't know if anybody has any questions or if Mr. Coleman has anything to add, but I think I've covered the issues I wanted to raise.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else, but could you kindly keep them to possibly 3 minutes?
Yes, if I could, just briefly. I'm not going to rehash what I've already set forth in 2 separate letters regarding 2 separate toll laws, but similar points were addressed by me in both those letters. I'm not going to belabor that again. But I think that what David is speaking to are probably the 2 most obvious, but there are others that the board needs to seriously consider in terms of how this law is going to be perhaps reworked and ultimately adopted. And we would ask the board to take into consideration David's comments, my comments, and also the points that were raised in my letters. Give serious consideration to those, and hopefully draft a law that will comply with the constitutional and state and local requirements, so that each of the towers is treated fairly. Nobody is denied a property interest that they already have, and that the law does accomplish what it truly should accomplish with respect to certain concerns the board's had, which I've heard at the different various meetings. I understand that. But again, if these concerns are not related to safety, the federal law does preempt even the state from taking action, and certainly preempts the town of Poughkeepsie Town Board from doing so. And I just would hope that the town board would take that seriously, give it due consideration, and rework this law in a way that satisfies the constitutional and statutory requirements. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Just to add one last thing, I watched the session, the non-public session from a week ago, and one of the things that was interesting to me was, for the first about 30 minutes of the discussion, there was no reference even made to the word safety or security or anything like that. The entire discussion centered around fair and reasonableness. And we could debate what is fair or what is reasonable or what is not, but that is not what the statute focuses in on. I think it was at like the 30-minute mark that maybe it was Mr. Renahan, again, I apologize if I'm butchering your last name, but for the first time that anybody even referenced safety. And that was in specific respect to one of the provisions. And I don't even believe it was one of the provisions we're taking issues with.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to be recognized.
Mr. Gorman?
Bob Gorman of Gorman's Garage in the city of Poughkeepsie. I was asked by the committee forming the new toll ordinance to make my comments. After working on the board of the Empire State Towing and Recovery Association for 15 years as a first vice president, and other levels that I've had, and now am the president of the association. So I had worked with Pete O'Connell, our attorney up in Albany, for years on formulating various municipalities' tow ordinances. We had just got done for 2.5 years in the town of Lloyd, and we got right up to it, and the town of Lloyd didn't go with our recommendations, and now has to revisit an ordinance that's better than they had, but not right. What I submitted to the board, to the committee, and through their legal department, was the most up-to-date ordinance based on decisional law. Now, I know everybody has feelings because this takes care of everybody. This bothers everybody's, right to make a living. But the tow ordinances throughout, and we have 15 board members, and I calculated over 600 years experience in working with this, working with trucking companies. And the list for a municipality is not designed for a new person to come on board, typically for the experience. There's also another instance where we say a minimum of 5 years experience, because that's what the Small Business Administration says. Most businesses will fail in the first 5 years. So we're looking for stable businesses. We're looking for people that have, existing locations. We don't want the one person that just got a truck and jumps on a list, and now you have to talk and deal with consumer safety issues and consumer protection issues. So that's why we require, their own separate lot for storage of their belongings and their vehicle under the control of one tow company. We also require 2 trucks because with the advent of incident management, Traffic Incident Management Steering Committee, which I am a member of in the New York State DOT, we all sit at the same table with state police. And tow trucks with a boom, lifting boom, have recovery ability. There's been much to be said about the towing where 90% can be done with a flatbed, and that is correct. But the flatbeds were not designed for recovery. The only one that is made in Canada, and it's an NRC. Nobody around here has an NRC flatbed that's on the town tow list as yet. What we need to first identify, though, that this list has to do with non-consensual towing, not consensual towing, non-consensual towing. So when somebody, owner's request at the scene, or if they're nice to the cop when they get pulled over for no license or registration, they can have owner's request. So I was tasked to put together a list with the letter of intent for a fair, balanced tow ordinance based on the year's experience of the entire board. The entire board, on the first copy, I submitted it. The board, the committee then added back the vehicle traffic laws pertaining to the specific areas of enforcement. I didn't have any problem with that because that was state law. So, when we talk about the insurance requirements, I had to rewrite that. I had to rewrite the workers' comp. I actually chair our safety group with workers' comp. I had to talk to the deputy counsel and our administrator to make sure that this is a subcontract with the town of Poughkeepsie, and under Section 50 of the workers' comp law, Section 2, Sub 3, you'll find subcontract, and we are subcontractors. So back in the day, real quick, my father and I were officers of the corporation, and we were exempt from workers' comp, just the people in the office, people in the garage, and on the road. Nowadays, you can't do that. Somehow, in the last 3 years, that law has switched so that everybody that's listed, and that's why I wanted that language and I made very specific that change, that all the drivers had to be listed. We also required that a tow truck and a flatbed to be on the light duty list and 2 trucks on the heavy list. 2 drivers, 2 trucks. What this would do is make sure that one company was properly equipped. Is one truck out of town and they have a scene and you know, can they get a second driver there? These scenarios happen. Town of Lloyd went with 1 truck. So now you have ghost people on the rotation list. In the town of Hempstead, Long Island, you have 28 places on the tow list. They all have 1 place and 1 phone number, and yet you have 6 or 7 companies that are actually there. So you have 2 trucks, 2 guys.
Bob, can you wrap it
So
up?
that when you
It's
get
been
a
like
car
5
and the
minutes.
billboards, am I running out of time? No? Okay.
Yes.
So when you
Yeah,
have a
you're running
car
out of
through the
time.
Okay. Well, I can be contacted at Gorman's Garage, 452-4925, for any specific technical answers to anybody's question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody
If
else?
I could be heard, yes, if I could be heard briefly. I was one of the attorneys who worked on the town of Lloyd matter for a different client, and I know Mr. Gore many years, and I'm aware of his position. I'm aware of Mr. O'Connell's position. We disagreed with that position. The town of Lloyd, to tell a brief story, took up a law, was unwilling to work with my client to discuss how that law could be implemented in a legal manner. They ultimately passed the law. We filed a lawsuit. They realized they would lose. They withdrew the lawsuit. We then said to them, sit down with us, listen to what we have to say, put together a law that we can all live with. And at about 11:55 at night, the night of the hearing, town of Lloyd had been through 3 different lawyers. Their final counsel sat down with the town board. We worked out a law that made everybody happy enough. It satisfied the needs of the public, of ours. I think it was as a compromise could have been reached at that time, and that's how that was done. With respect to Mr. Gorman's comments about his proposal, his law, the work he's done on that, I applaud that. I appreciate that. But it is up to the board to decide what it is going to do. The town of Lloyd, initially, I believe, took great counsel from Mr. Gorman and also Mr. O'Connell, but they ultimately decided to go a different direction, presumably on the advice of their counsel, when they looked at what we were actually proposing and what they were trying to do. There are things that Mr. Gorman mentioned that we're not opposed to. A number of the things he said we're not opposed to, but there are some things that we don't believe are in compliance with the federal law, regardless of what the towing association may think is the best practice, and citing the SBA's conclusion that most businesses fail in 5 years is anecdotal at best. It's not the basis for legislation, and it's certainly not the basis of legislation that's got to withstand a challenge in a lawsuit or under the federal law. And I think that the board would be well advised to take all the counsel it can get, but to make its own decision with the advice of its counsel and make sure that that law is likely to withstand a challenge, and you will likely reach a law that will follow that path.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Make a motion.
Yeah, just one comment,
ahead.
so the board knows. I've spoken to Mr. Coleman. We talked the other day about having a discussion among the lawyers fairly shortly. And then after that, whether board members might be interested in being involved in a second or more populated round of discussions. We could sort our way through that.
Motion to resume the rules.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Councilman Carlos, do you have anything to comment on this?
Yes, I do, Mr. Supervisor. After the town board meeting last week, and it was, I have to thank each member, thought-provoking and a lot of information. In consultation with the town attorney, we are probably going to have to.
Bill, can you speak up?
Yeah, how about now? Is that good?
Not really.
A little better.
Better.
How's that?
Better.
Better.
Okay. With council, we had a discussion. The proposed law has 2 parts, one about accident scene safety, one about the tow list, and they're commingled. So we're going to have to redo this and break out just the safety area away from the tow list area, so that they're completely separate, not interwoven. That's going to take a rewrite. That's going to be a significant change. So we're going to have to repost this and redo a public hearing on the new law. I'm sorry to my fellow board members, but there's been a lot of work on this and a lot of people's opinions put into this. And I think it's in the best interest of the town to try and do it the straight, simple way. So, Mr. Supervisor, once this is closed, this particular section of law, this draft, will be pulled, and there will be a subsequent new one, which will be circulated, and then we'll have to have another public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick addition to that, please. Bill, I think the work that you've put into this is definitely not wasted. I think you can use the spirit of both of those separate sections of the safety and the administration of the tow list exists in the current writing. I think the task at hand is to separate them so that the umbrella blanket towing safety in the town of Poughkeepsie is a separate thing, and then specifically the administration of the police department's non-consensual tow list is an entirely separate thing. So the constitutionality of each side is really clear. But I don't think you have to go right back to the drawing board and start from scratch. I think you have a lot of the building blocks already in the existing piece of legislation.
Yes, Matt, that's the plan, is to do that with the assistance of council, work our way back through it. And it's not going to be a lot of work. We're not changing material. I mean, we have the perspectives from the different board members, and that'll be included. But what we're going to do is we're going to do this bifurcation separate, whether it's two separate entities or just one town law and one administrative policy. Those are questions yet to be decided. So it's not going to be a long time, but these are the steps I think we really need to take.
Yep, agreed.
Bill.
Yeah. May I briefly comment?
No. Public hearing is over.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to close this public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion not to vote on this tonight, and it'll go back to the committee.
Mhm.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On to public hearing number 2, outdoor dining, sidewalk seating. Make a motion to open that public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Would anybody like to discuss open dining public hearing?
Jay, this is Doreen.
Go ahead, Doreen.
So, I have some questions on this. Like, first of all, I think this is going to be hard to enforce. And I have a question, like on 2A, where you say that it says outdoor dining facilities as determined by the development director in the creation of common public dining areas on College View Avenue and elsewhere as determined by the supervisor or his designee. So are you going to like appoint a person, or is that going to be changing, or?
Doreen, it's going to be a joint effort between Director of Development and Zoning, because they'd be the ones that would handle it. The only thing we're taking out is the fact of having go to the board with a site plan review. They'll handle it in-house.
Okay, and so like who's going to make sure that like these areas don't block the sidewalks? Let me give you an example. Yesterday, we drove past Savona's there on College View. And in addition to their regular outdoor seating like in front of their restaurant, they had this big white tent that was more towards like the corner. So first of all, I don't know, it says in here that they should have a permit from, I guess, from the building department if you have a tent. So I don't know if they had a permit for that, but I mean, this law is not even in effect yet.
Doreen, the tent was inspected by the building department.
Okay, so did anybody make sure that like it wasn't blocking the sidewalk? Is that part of that?
Yes, there was actually a inspection done out there, and they've been working with Savona's. There's a walk through. They left open a 6 to 8 foot space that they can walk right through the tent with signs on both ends, that it's a pass through that they can walk through.
Okay, all right. That wasn't obvious just from driving by. And then the only other thing was that, does this still mean that, I mean, like, they still have to socially distance, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And a lot of
Thank you,
these,
Jay.
Doreen, a lot of these may go away shortly if we get into phase 3 where some of the indoor dining may start happening. But we wanted to put this out there to go forward because county executive put an executive order out there, and we had some of our zoning laws waived through that executive order of the county executive to make this a lot easier. But we wanted to have some of our own guidelines in there where they had to come into the town, you know, to get an okay, so it just wasn't, as I was referring to, as the Wild West, do what you want and put up what you want. So we had a little bit of a authoritative approach that we could use to some of the places that were doing just about anything they wanted, which so far we've been pretty lucky.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? If not, make a motion to close this public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Renahan?
Whereas the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie have in this day adopted a local law amendment creating Town Code 210-109.1, allowing the use of public and private premises for outdoor dining and sidewalk seating. And whereas the town board having found that the adoption of that local law amendment and the authorization to close portions of College View Avenue and to create common public dining areas on College View Avenue and elsewhere would not have a significant adverse environmental impact. Now therefore be resolved that the town board authorizes the temporary closure by highway superintendent of one lane or portion of College View Avenue pursuant to town law 6410B, and their use by food establishments to operate outdoor dining facilities thereon as determined by the development director upon compliance with all required conditions. And be it further resolved that the town board authorizes creation pursuant to town law 64-2 of common public dining areas of College View Avenue or elsewhere on town properties as determined by the supervisor or his designee upon compliance with all required conditions.
He's reading B.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions on this?
No, I just wanted to say something. I have stated in the past when Savonis has been before the board for other reasons that I am employed by the company. I'm their director of business development. Because I am the one that does handle these things, I want to abstain from voting for this. As Doreen stated, Savonis is clearly utilizing some of these temporary waiving of permit fees and things like that. So I would like to not vote on this or anything else that has to do with things that the company is taking advantage of.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So that was
Abstentions?
2B, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's where 2B, one, motion passes 6 with 1 abstention, 6-1. Bill Carlos, 2A.
I don't have paperwork for 2A, Judge.
All right, I'll read it.
I can,
Whereas the Town of Poughkeepsie Town Board, being mindful of the health and economic impacts of COVID-19 crisis, has determined to consider local law amendment to Chapter 210, zoning of the town code relating to the allowance of public and private premises for outdoor dining facilities and sidewalk seating by separate resolution authorizing the temporary closure by the highway superintendent of one lane or portions of College View Avenue and are used by food service establishments to operate outdoor dining facilities thereon as determined by the development director and the creation of common public areas on College View Avenue and elsewhere on town property, as determined by the town supervisor or his designee. Whereas a written recommendation was received from the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development dated June 10th, 2020, determined that the local law and resolutions or matters of local concern, whereas the town board notes with appreciation the planning board's recommendation that the fee provisions of local law be deleted, and it has made that draft change. Now therefore be resolved that after reviewing the annex, the AF, the supervisor is authorized to answer no to the question of Part 2 of the annexed environmental assessment form and to complete a negative declaration determine that the adoption of this local law and the street closure and dining area resolutions will not cause a significant adverse environmental impact. Now therefore be it enacted the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie, pursuant to a public hearing duly noticed and held on June 17th, 2020, 7 p.m., Town Hall, Town of Poughkeepsie, 1 over Rocker Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, is hereby adopt amendments to Town Code Chapter 210 titled Zoning to add 210-109.1, temporary outdoor dining facilities and sidewalk seating attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein, with the language to be added underlined, the language to be deleted to be stricken. Town Board is hereby waive a verbatim reading of said amendments and does here direct that said amendments be spread across the record as if they in fact have been read verbatim. Be it further enacted, said local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of State. So moved.
Second.
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 We got a motion, second. Any more questions with that?
Yeah, well, I do hope that closing of College View Avenue is done very, very sparingly and
Yes.
judiciously, because that is a very busy street.
Yep.
It appears the seating, sidewalk seating they have there now is very popular and seems to be adequate for their
That's what-
needs. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was more or less if this was a prolonged effect, but
right.
hopefully we'll be in phase 3 quickly and we'll be
And
moving
I
inside.
also want to point out that you also had picnic tables placed in the open space next to
Garden
Craft
space,
the Cup. Yeah, and that was also very helpful.
And they are getting used, so some of
Yeah.
the businesses didn't have any room outside, so it has helped some of the smaller ones to make some room.
And hopefully next week, once we have some indoor dining too, this will be less pressure on this, but I think it's a good move, and also appreciate that the fees were taken out.
I agree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain here as well, Jay.
Okay. Motion passes 6 yeses, 1 abstention. 3A.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Whereas an order to remedy, a copy of which is attached here too, has been issued for property located at 10 Moniker Road, Town of Poughkeepsie, State of New York, pursuant to Chapter 159 of the Town of Poughkeepsie Town Code. And whereas said order to remedy has not been complied with, now therefore be it resolved, the Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby set the 15th day of July, 2020, at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall, Town of Poughkeepsie, 1 Over Rocker Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, as and for the time, date, and place for a public hearing, to consider a recommendation from the zoning administrator and the town or its contractor, remove as needed, continue to remove all garden waste, fallen tree limbs, cut grass to a height not to exceed 6 inches, and maintain throughout the growing season, all at the above property, so it will not become overgrown and unsightly. All at the above property, the cost of which work shall constitute a lien and a charge on the real property until paid, satisfied, or discharged, and shall be collected in the same manner as other town charges. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any questions in this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
We're on to 3B now. Is the third one being pulled?
Yes.
Yeah, third one's gonna be pulled.
Okay. Resolution 3B, whereas an order to remedy, a copy of which is attached here too, has been issued for property located at 12 Raker Road, Town of Poughkeepsie, State of New York, pursuant to Chapter 159A, mowing of occupied properties of the Town of Poughkeepsie Town Code. And whereas said order to remedy has not been complied with, now therefore be it resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby set the 15th day of July, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall, Town of Poughkeepsie, 1 Over Rocker Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, as and for the time, day, and place of a public hearing to consider a recommendation from the zoning administrator that the town or its contractor remove and as needed continue to remove all garden waste, fallen tree limbs, cut grass to a height not to exceed 12 inches, and maintain throughout the growing season all of the above property, so it will not become overgrown and unsightly, all of the above property, the cost of which work shall constitute a lien and charge on the above real property until paid, satisfied, or discharged, and shall be collected in the same manner as other town charges. So moved.
Second.
The motion, second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. 3C has been cleaned up, and under the direction of the Deputy Zoning Administrator, we're going to pull 3C. 4A.
All right. Be resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the settlement of a tax certiorari proceedings instituted by 2757-2759 West Main LLC for the property located at 2757-2759 West Main Street, Poughkeepsie, New York, 6158-09-245511 for the 2018 tax assessment roll as shown on the attached consent judgment, and be further resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor or his designee, Town Assessor Jennifer Munn, and Kyle Barrett of Vanderwater LLP to sign such papers as necessary to effectuate said settlement. So moved.
Second.
A motion second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 7-0. Be it resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby authorized the settlement of tax cert proceedings instituted by Riverside Office Park LLC for property located at 2649 South Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, 6060-02-999894 for the 2018 and 2019 tax assessment rolls as shown in the attached consent judgment. Be it further resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby authorized the supervisor or his designated town assessor, Jennifer Mund and Kyle Barnett of Vanderwater, to sign such papers as are necessary to effectuate said settlement. So moved.
Second.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the settlement of the tax certiorari proceedings instituted by Oak Tree Garden Apartments LLC for the property located on 120 Cheneville Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, 6158-13-062357 for the 2018 and 2019 tax assessment rolls as shown on the attached consent judgment. And be it further resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor or his designee, Town Assessor Jennifer Munn and Kyle Barnett of Vanderwater and Vanderwater LLP to sign such papers as are necessary to effectuate said settlement. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the settlement of the tax cert proceeding instituted by Manor Hill Mobile Home Park LLC for property located at 179 Van Wagner Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, 6162-16-996320 for the 2018 and 2019 tax assessment rolls as shown on the attached consent judgment. And be it further resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor or his designee, Town Assessor Jennifer Mund and Kyle Barnett of Vanderwater and Vanderwater LLP to sign such papers as are necessary to effectuate said settlement. So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Whereas pursuant to the approval for the Wiltie Estates final subdivision plat, the Town of Poughkeepsie received from Ultracraft Homes Incorporated an irrevocable offer of cession, which included a utility easement over Lot 31 in the subdivision to allow for the provision of utility services to Lot 55 in the subdivision. Said easement area being shown on Dutchess map filed 10510A, the offer, and a partial copy of said map being attached here too. And whereas Alexei Nexia and Maria Chubruchenskaya, I'll just say Maria D., the current owners of Lot 55, seek to use the utility easement to provide sewer service to Lot 55 and potentially to a second lot, which may be subdivided from it now therefore. Be resolved that the acceptance and transfer of utility easement by the town to allow the provision of utility services, including sewer, to lots on an approved subdivision is a type 2 action requiring no secret review. And be it further resolved that the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby accept the offer and utility easement. And be it further resolved that the Town Board Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor to transfer by quick claim the easement over Lot 31 to the grantees in substantially the form annexed for $1 for the sole purpose of allowing the grantees to install utility services, including not more than 2 sewer lines and appearances within the bounds of the easement to serve no more than 2 single-family homes on the present Lot 55, if and as approved. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is authorized and directed to publish a permissive referendum notice within 10 days of adoption of this resolution. And be it further resolved that town's execution and delivery of the transfer is conditioned on the passage of the time for permissive referendum petition without the filing of such petition. So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Resolution 6, be it resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby reappoint Yvonne Laub and Daniel Stephen Fannin to the Historic Preservation Commission through April 19th, 2025. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on that one?
No, it's just they're both valuable additions to the Historic Preservation Commission. They do a lot of work, so it's appreciated.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Welcome back.
Okay. Be resolved, the town board does hereby accept email confirmations for Robert Nasser and Rocco Romano for participation in the Dutchess County Planning Federation webinar entitled "The 5G Wireless Revolution, Points and Pitfalls for Land Use Boards." Copies of email confirmations are attached. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Be it resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby accept, with regret, the retirement of Keith Ballard, Sr., Water Superintendent with the Town of Poughkeepsie Water Department, effective June 27th, 2020. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments on this one?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. I think it would be small to say that he's done a fantastic job. I think it would be light to say he will be very difficult to replace. And he's been working on Tom for the better part of a year trying to get that done. But Keith, you really are very good at this. Please enjoy your retirement. Thank you for everything you've done for the town of Poughkeepsie.
Bill, Bill, I have to second that. I mean, the knowledge that Keith had, he was here, he left for a few years and came back. The knowledge that he brought back and what he's trained his employees to be able to do now and mentoring Tom for the last year and a half or so, I think has been phenomenal. We know where he lives. He's not getting too far away, so if we really need him, we know he's only down the road. But Keith, I really want to say, enjoy your retirement. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Keith, best wishes to you, and I enjoyed working with you all these years, and I know I've talked to you privately, so I'll let it go at that. But thank you very much for everything.
Thanks.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Congratulations.
Motion passes 7-0. I don't know how that happened, Keith.
Be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does accept with regret the resignation of Let Tucker, zone administrator, effective July 3rd, 2020. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any comment on this one?
Lizette wasn't here that long, but I enjoyed working with her for the time she was here.
Mike, I agree. Lizette brought a lot to the board, a lot of knowledge. She came from a small town in Pennsylvania originally, and she worked hard when she was here, and I wish her all the best of luck on her future endeavors.
She's always been very accessible. Anytime I've ever needed anything explained to me over getting used to a seat on the town board in terms of zoning, which can be a tricky and sometimes very complex issue. She's always been readily available and able to explain things in terms anyone can understand. So she'll be missed. Thank you.
Agreed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 10, be it resolved that the
Motion passes
town board of
7-0.
the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby accept with regret the retirement of Charles Harris, auto mechanic with the town of Poughkeepsie Highway Department, effective July 31st, 2020. So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comment on this one? Just want to wish Charlie the best retirement. I've known him for quite a few years prior to being on the board. I wish him the best and thanks for his many years of service in the town. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby appoint Timothy Millard to the position of full-time software support specialist, grade 10, step 3, at the salary of $33.34 per hour, effective June 22nd, 2020, which appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 8 nor more than 26 weeks per civil service law, and be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to execute and file all documentation required by the Dutchess County Department of Human Resources in connection with this appointment. So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this one?
Thank God.
We knew that was coming. Yeah. Tim, welcome aboard. I'll reach out to you tomorrow. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. You got some big shoes to fill and a lot of work to get caught up on.
Whereas the town board has received an application of Mid-Hudson Development Corp. for the South Hills Common requesting that the zoning for tax parcel numbers 6158 01261 and 6158 237 located on Route 9D and D. Laverne Avenue respectively, Poughkeepsie, New York, in the town of Poughkeepsie consisting of approximately 6.51 acres, be changed from residence single family R20 to residence multifamily designation, and whereas the proposed amendment is attached hereto and incorporated herein, and the town board does hereby waive verbatim reading of said amendment, and does direct that said amendment be spread across the record as if in fact it had been read verbatim, and whereas the change of zone would involve 6.51 acres and the action to amend the zoning map is an unlisted action under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and whereas the town board has determined that the proposed amendment must be referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development and to the town planning board for review and recommendation, and whereas the town board has examined the state's Environmental Quality Review Act regulations and has determined that the town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board, through its site plan review and approval authority under Chapter 210 of the Town of Poughkeepsie Code, has extremely broad governmental powers to investigate the potential environmental effects associated with the application and has the experience and the capability necessary to conduct a thorough environmental assessment of the action. And whereas amending the zoning map requires a public hearing, now therefore be resolved that 1, the town board has determined that the action should be subject to a coordinated review because the proposed use of the property will, among other permits and approvals, require site plan approval by the town planning board. Therefore, the town board consents to the planning board acting as lead agency to coordinate the environmental review of the proposed action pursuant to Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law. And number 2, the town board refers this matter to Dutchess County Department of Planning and Economic Development for a recommendation pursuant to General Municipal Law 239M. And 3, the town board refers this matter to the town planning board for an advisory report pursuant to Town Code Section 210-154. And 4, the town board hereby defers setting a public hearing on the proposed zoning map amendment until it has received a recommendation and a determination of significance pursuant to seeker from the planning board as lead agency. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on that? All those
Yes,
in fa-
Jay, do we have any indication what they're planning to do with this joint piece of property?
Yeah, they're gonna put small group of apartments on there. Jeff has met with them out there, and they presented to us, Bill, probably, I'm gonna say close to 6 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, Bill, just so you know, just north of that, and well, east really of that, is other RM right next door. So there's really not much of an impact. Right next to
I understand that, Jeff. It's probably a good use of the property. My concern is the wetlands.
Okay, it's further up. We already looked into that. That's something that we worked on, and they actually were talking about moving it, which they did to accommodate the wetlands, as you can see in the map. We're looking at that. So they actually were able to shift the units to conform with that, so it protected those wetland areas.
That's really good news. Thank you, Jeff.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Resolution 13, be it resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie, on behalf of the Arlington Sewer District, does hereby authorize the supervisor to execute a sewage disposal agreement in substantially the form annexed to provide 30,000 gallons per day for a 10-year term with 2 5-year options to the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency. And be it further resolved, the town board determines that signing this sewage disposal agreement involves the ongoing administration of town functions and that no seeker review is required because it is a type 2 action. So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any questions on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor to execute a sewer tenancy option agreement and sewer facility inspection and maintenance agreement in substantially the form annexed between 6 Manchester LLC, Shady Brook Trailer Park, and the town of Poughkeepsie Sewer, Arlington Sewer District, Arlington Sewer District Capital, Arlington Sewer District Main, Arlington Sewer District Service Area, and Arlington Sewer Service Area Number 1 to provide sewer service to property known as Shady Brook Trailer Park, 67 Old Manchester Road, Town of Poughkeepsie, identified as grid number 6261-04-672364, and be further resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor to execute and/or accept stormwater maintenance easement and a stormwater maintenance agreement relative to the above-mentioned property in substantially the form annexed, and be further resolved that said document shall include all standard town terms and conditions, and such acceptance and authorization of the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie is subject to approval of all final documents by the town attorney, town engineer, and director of municipal development for the town of Poughkeepsie, and be further resolved, the town board finds that because the Shady Brook project has been the subject of full secret review by the town planning board, no additional secret review is required. So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions on that one? The only comment I'd like to make, the corporation that took over Shady Brook Trailer Park as of now is totally gutted the park, and Shady Brook prior to this was using septic systems that were leaching into the creek there. It all failed over the years, so I want to really thank Mr. Scott for reaching out and going this route and going into Arlington Sewer. It cost them more to go that way as opposed to putting in 4 new septic systems, because we all know how the pollutants in the creek affect the creek going down, and one of the big steps is to eliminate some of these. I think this is a big elimination because it was almost 80 units that we're eliminating that were leaching into the creek, so I think this was a good step forward for the town environmentally to make this choice.
Do you know how many units he could get in there when this one's done?
Is it 60 some odd?
Yeah, it was 80 something, I think he's down to 60, but he's got to raise the whole park up and everything.
Oh, yeah, it's really low.
great.
No,
Yeah.
it's good,
Yeah,
though.
it
I went by, it
looks-
looks really
I was
good
like,
now,
whoa.
compared to
Yeah,
what
it
it was.
looks completely different.
Many years coming, and I think it's going to be a nice looking project when it's done.
Mhm.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. This is mine. Be it resolved, the town board of town of Poughkeepsie is hereby grant special consent to the following items, to wit: 1, appoint attorney regarding claim against the town; 2, authorize the supervisor to sign the Marist College stormwater documents; 3, authorize the supervisor to sign Coreward Ventures sewer tenancy agreement. Be it further resolved that upon the objection of any member of the town board, an item may be removed on the list and voted on separately. So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby retain David Posner, Kimberly Huntley, and the law firm of McCabe and Mack at the hourly rate of $225 for partners, $210 for associates, and $185 for paralegals to defend the town in a suit known as LG 52 DOE for town of Poughkeepsie et al., and to work with attorneys to the town to assist the supervisor and comptroller in investigating and enforcing the town's entitlement to insurance carriers' defense and indemnity coverage relating to that suit, including through litigation if necessary. So moved.
Got a motion and a
Second.
second? Any questions on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Jay, it's Bill. I don't have the special consent
Okay.
paperwork either.
I have it.
Okay.
Whereas Marist Real Property Services Incorporated and Marist College are each parties to master stormwater inspection and maintenance agreements with the town of Poughkeepsie, and they have each conveyed companion easements. Sorry, I gotta make it bigger here. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie authorizes the supervisor to execute all documents necessary to accept an amendment to the stormwater facilities inspection and maintenance agreement with Marist Real Property Services, Inc. for stormwater facilities at its steel plant expansion site, and be it further resolved that the supervisor is authorized to execute all documents necessary to accept an amendment to the stormwater facilities inspection and maintenance agreement with Marist College for its McCann Center lands, and an amendum to its master stormwater facilities inspection and maintenance easement, so that the recently acquired lands and recently completed stormwater improvements will be covered by its master stormwater agreement and master stormwater easement. And be it further resolved that the acquisition and improvement of the additional McCann lands and the development of the steel plant expansion were the subject of full environmental reviews by the Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board, and no further environmental review is required. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be resolved, Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby authorized the supervisor to execute a sewer tenancy option agreement in substantially the form annexed between Corwood Ventures Incorporated and the Town of Poughkeepsie on behalf of the Arlington Sewer District, Arlington Sewer District Capital, Arlington Sewer District Main, Arlington Sewer Service Area, and Arlington Sewer Service Area Number 1 to provide sewer service to the property located at 2440 and 300 Van Wagner Road, Town of Poughkeepsie, identified as grid number 626203213321 and 626203226351, and be further resolved that said documents shall include all standard town terms and conditions, and such acceptance and authorization by the town board, the Town of Poughkeepsie, is subject to the approval of all final documents by the town attorney, town engineer, and the sewer department of the Town of Poughkeepsie. Be it further resolved that the town board finds that because the development of their project has been the subject of a full secret review by the town planning board, no additional secret review is required. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on that one?
I don't know if there's a 2,440 Van Wagner, maybe it's 244.
244.
I had 240 and 300.
Okay, I have 2440.
Yeah, 240 and 300.
What did I say?
No, no.
No,
Okay.
it's written that way. Yeah.
It's written that way, but on the back one, it's 240. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I'll just fix that.
Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for any item or
Second.
anything. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Would anybody like to discuss anything?
Doreen's raised her hand.
Can you see that?
Doreen?
Okay, thanks. So, Jay, can you say anything about what that lawsuit you hired the attorneys for?
No.
All right, we'll just have to guess that
Yeah.
it has to do with the doe is someone unnamed.
Doreen,
Only
it's
seen
very
that in the
vague.
past.
It's a very vague
Yeah.
lawsuit at this point.
Okay. And then speaking of vague, do you have any inklings yet about what the 2021 budget will look like?
No, we started working on it, and we're trying to cut. All the department heads were told to cut as much as possible. We started working with them about 3 weeks ago with some of the departments to get moving and going forward. You know, we're looking at still a major shortfall to catch up for this year, and we have no idea what's going on next year because our sales tax and mortgage tax, we haven't really even seen the numbers yet for the COVID time. Everything's come in so far as prior or the very beginning, so we don't know quite where those numbers are going to stand. So we've been extremely cautious, and we told everybody, don't look to buy anything or purchase anything, and we're going to cut as many as possible. And the retirees that have retired at this point, we're not looking for a replacement for anybody until we figure this all out.
And I would guess that you probably would have to allocate more money for tax certs. I could see that happening potentially in the future.
We have had that discussion already. You are correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Person want to talk to the phone?
Go
Is there
ahead.
somebody on the phone
No.
that would like to speak? No?
No? If not, a motion to resume the rules?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Be it resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie does adjourn to executive session to consider the following matters. Discuss regarding proposed pending or current litigation, LG 52, matters subject to attorney-client privilege, and be it further resolved, no action appropriating money will be taken. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Town Board is in the executive session at 8:04 PM.
Thank you,
See
Keith.
everybody in about 5